So I've had this bike for a long time. I thought with springtime right around the corner, I'd roll it out and start using it a little bit. Well, in doing so, what I discovered was that back here, that thing right there is a fuel primer bulb. It's cracked. Can you see that? See how it's cracked? Yeah. So I got one on Amazon, and we're going to install that and just clean things up generally around the carburetor area. Clean the engine a little bit, tank, just dust things off and see if we can get this started and used. It's a belt drive belt there. There's a centrifugal clutch inside the housing and connected to a shaft with a little kind of like a motorcycle drive belt around a big loop here. Gives it a top speed of about 25 miles an hour. So I cleaned the air filter housing. It was pretty gummed up from sitting for so long. And here's my new little part. I cleaned it up with throttle body air intake cleaner, which I think is appropriate for this air filter housing. Got a new foam filter because the old one was melted. And so we're going to go about installing these parts and then put some gas in and fire it up. Well, I put it on, and this thing here is supposed to prime the fuel. And while a little bit started coming up, I'm suspect that maybe the diaphragm behind this is faulty. Fortunately, when I was buying these parts, I saw a carburetor online complete for about 18 bucks. So I just went ahead and bought it. That way I can compare the performance of this carburetor to this carburetor, rebuild this one entirely. It looks like all I need to do is order another diaphragm for it. And then I'll have kind of the heart of the assembly, which is the carburetor. I'll have those, a good one on there, and then I'll have another one ready to go in the wings if it's ever needed. So I thought that was a good idea. Big difference. Yeah, I pumped the old carburetor right here. I pumped this probably 10 or 15 times, and I didn't get any fuel up there. It just barely came up the feed tube and had air bubbles in it. So I'm thinking that's probably why I parked this thing, was I just couldn't keep it running, and that the diaphragm inside of here was probably shot. So I'm going to go ahead and order a couple more diaphragms so I have some spares and I can rebuild that original carburetor. But now I have a good carburetor on here. I'm going to put it back together and see if I can get it started. All right, so there it is. It's all put back together. The engine is running good. The only thing I had to do was on the old carburetor, this is the new throttle cable bracket from the new carburetor. I had to exchange it with the one on the old carburetor because they were just slightly different, and the cable was holding the throttle open too far, so it wouldn't come down to a regular idle. Now I've got it down to where it's idling very nicely. So I'm going to go for a little ride on this thing and see how it does. Okay, so I just got back from a little ride. Here it is. The idle was a little high, so I adjusted it down. And this is about how quiet it can get and how smooth it idles. It's a 2-cycle engine, so it's not super quiet. nor is it super smooth on the idle, but I'll blip the throttle a little bit. So there you go. Sounds like a typical weed eater. Clean some of the rust off. I have a special way I clean rust. These were all rusty down here. There's still a little bit, but over here, pretty clean. How do I clean off rust? Well, I take a little WD-40, little WD, and I squirt it on this stainless steel mesh. Way better than steel wool because it doesn't fall apart. And I just use the steel mesh, and the WD has a solvent to dissolve the rust and polish the surface, and it works great. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you think it'd help somebody else, please share it with them. Subscribe and ring the bell to get notified when new content gets posted. And as always, comment as you see fit. Till the next video, see you later. Pretty comfortable seat, kind of a gel seat.